All right, I'd like to begin. My name is Brother Helfrich. I am a full-time faculty here at BYU-Idaho, have been for a little more than a decade. I am the associate chair of the Computer Science and Software Engineering department. I'm the course lead of 12 courses now, and I'm really excited to talk to you about discussion boards. So first of all, a little bit of background. I have my master's and bachelor's from the University of Pennsylvania in software engineering, and I have my PhD from Idaho State University in instructional design. And I think both of those will be a little bit relevant in our discussion today. So first of all, I'd like to give you a little bit of perspective. Just like you, I have a lot of experience in face-to-face delivery, as a student for a couple decades and a teacher, face-to-face teacher for a decade. And as a result, you got this really big tool bag of pedagogy, of all these different things that you've seen great teachers do and use through the years. And as a face-to-face instructor, you kind of draw from those things. But online is different and it's new. And those same tools and techniques don't quite work the way we kind of hope they would. And so it requires a little bit of a rethink. So my experience in the online world began when I was doing my PhD, and it was about half online and half face-to-face. And I remember I was taking this class on learning theory. Is there anyone who teaches learning theory or psychology or anything? Okay, because I always thought it was a bit of hooey, but I didn't really tell my teachers that. I don't want to offend anyone. But I had the first class in a two-class sequence was a traditional face-to-face experience. The teacher asks questions, the students answer, and when you answer a question like that, you're kind of shooting from the hip, because you only have just a couple of seconds to make your comment before the thread moves on to something else. And so and that kind of characterizes the traditional face-to-face delivery. There's only one thread of discussion, and you don't really have a lot of reflection time, and your comments are usually a couple sentences, maybe a paragraph. And I think if you transcribe it, you'll find many grammatical errors, right? Only a polished politician can speak like they write, and we're not that, right? The second semester, it was an online class. And I was bracing for it because I had some horrible online classes before that. These, glitchy video feeds with buzz in the background, and, the video wasn't quite right. And I just thought it was a very grating experience. But this class was different. There was no video. It was all discussion boards. And the teacher would ask a question, and then and she would expect us to respond in an essay. A cited essay, please. 2 or 3 paragraphs, fully cited, make your point. So there was no shooting from the hip. And she did a great job of having multiple threads going on simultaneously. And her job was to mediate. She would take a thread and direct it, or fork it, or pinch it. And she was on morning, noon, and night, and she was always this presence. And so there was always something going on. And if you got points according to the quality of your posts, and as you and it quickly became evident that you got to be monitoring the discussion board all the time to find a post that you have an opinion on, that you remember a fact from, that you can go look up, find some sources, and make a really high-quality post. And I realized quickly that online experience was superior to the face-to-face one I had before. The quality of the discussion was at least an order of magnitude better. And that was the first time in my life I thought, wow, this online delivery can be better than face-to-face. And how could that be? Because, what characterizes online is the computer, and what characterizes face-to-face is this rich interaction we have. And that was a fallacy that I lived with for about 2 years before I finally realized that is not what characterizes online, and that's not what characterizes face-to-face. You see, face-to-face is characterized by a synchronous discussion. We're all here, the same room, the same time, 1, 2, maybe 3 threads if you really manage it carefully, where online is characterized by asynchronous. Now, some objectives, some pedagogy really need that rich communication of a synchronous delivery. But most do not. In fact, I found in the 12 classes I've developed so far that most classes actually benefit most from an asynchronous delivery, when people have a reflection time. And when class is going on 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, not 3 times for 1 hour. And that's what I really want you to think about, is trying to change your mentality from online is the computer and face-to-face is this, but rather synchronous versus asynchronous. And I think if we really internalize that, we can move forward. So the question is, and this is like the main point of this whole talk, is how can we leverage this asynchronicity? How can we leverage it in such a way we can make the online experience better? Better in every measurable way. And I know some of you are like, oh, there's no way. I was sitting there in my English class when I was in 8th grade, and Mrs. Washington, that was my 8th grade English teacher, boy, she made Hamlet come to life, and I really loved English because of that one lecture. And there's no way that could be replicated in the face-to-face experience, in the online experience. And that's true, because you can't really translate something that was optimized for face-to-face into the online. Instead, you kind of got to pull back, find out what you're really trying to teach, and then leverage what's unique and what's strong about the medium in which you have. Okay? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, a discussion board. What is a discussion board? Everyone knows. You ask all the students around, what is a discussion board? The answer is busy work. Right? Hey, we have a discussion board. No. Right? It's like they're bracing because they're going to get hit over the head by something, right? And that's the experience we have, because everyone knows that online is just busy work, right? Just like everyone knows that PowerPoints are the worst, or if someone brings out the projector or the TV screen into Sunday school, then it's going to be a horrible lesson, right? Because we have these preconceptions about what that technology dictates for pedagogy. But I hope you're going to see today that that's not really true. That we are in charge of the pedagogy, we're in charge of the learning experience, and the discussion board is simply just a tool. It could be abused or it could be leveraged, right? Like for an example, you take your typical question and answer session you have in class or in Sunday school or something, and everyone knows there's the horrible question asker. The one that says, could you please tell me, and they give you the question, and every answer but the one they have in mind is wrong. And it's punishing, right? You say, well, how about this? And you give a really insightful answer, and the teacher says, wrong. Next one. Wrong. And everyone's getting beat down with the head. And pretty soon people realize if you raise your hand, you're going to be wrong, so therefore we're not going to participate. And that's one example of how question and answers could be used incorrectly, right? But you've also seen people who are really good at leveraging that Q&A format to get people to dive deeper and understand the topic and really critically think about the question. And so, yes, that one tool can be used for good or for evil. PowerPoints as well. PowerPoints could be like, let's read through the outline together now. Like sing through the bouncing dot you see like a Sesame Street song. Horrible. Or it could be used to present, complex information that's difficult to do to reproduce on a whiteboard. It's something that could speed up delivery so we can spend more time learning, less time watching the teacher write. PowerPoints can be used for good or for evil. And I hope we're going to see that the discussion boards are the same way. So the question is, how can we take this pervasive and common tool we use in online and use it for good? How can we further learning outcomes? How can we make this the most exciting thing the student has done all week long? Is there hope, right? And I'm hoping we're going to see that there might just be hope. So there are 6 considerations. I need to apologize. As you may have overheard me talking with the technology people, that the font didn't come through for my PowerPoint, so there's going to be some weird word wrapping and stuff like that, so we'll just run with this. But there are 6 considerations that we need to take into account every time we design or deliver instruction with a discussion board. And these are interdependence, size, namely group size, not how many threads or how much real estate it takes on the screen. Identity, what the discussion board's all about. Task, what they're trying to do. The norms, the social norms, that's kind of a fun one. Because every time you're in a face-to-face class, the teacher sets the social norms, subconsciously or consciously. And it takes about 2 or 3 weeks for the class to figure it out, what's going on, and then they hear the norms and things move on. And synergy. Oh, wait, I used a buzzword, right? Isn't that like automatically a no-no? Oh, no, a buzzword, I'm going to sleep, right? But synergy, no, synergy is real, and it's important, and we'll talk about it. So, this is a little bit of audience participation. Which one of these shall we talk about first? Interdependence. Yes, interdependence. And this is a common way. See, there's my word wrapping. This should be a part of the box. And for some reason, PowerPoint won't let me resize it. I don't know, it's in a weird state right now. Okay, so a discussion board is not an independent activity. This is an activity where all the members of the class work together, okay? And that brings up to an important concept that I'm going to call community, right? Community. Now, community is defined as a group of people, can't be one, with the same goal, and are invested in the welfare of the others, okay? Like for an example, a team could be considered a community if everyone is invested in making the team win, not if one person's, invested in stealing the ball and trying to rack up their stats, right? I'm a cyclist. That's one of my hobbies. And every Tuesday night, a bunch of my friends and I get together and we ride together. And that's a community. We have the same goal. We love cycling. We help each other out. One person has a flat. The other person helps the other person out. We have this interdependence, right? And that's what community is trying to foster. Now, sometimes the way the discussion board is set up destroys community because we put people against one another. Like curving grades is a great way to destroy community because now it's like you gotta destroy someone else in order to get your high score. It's a zero-sum game. The best way to get an A is make sure you've got an F, right? And so if we do things like that, community is gone. But if we can find some way to get the students to be invested in each other, to really care about the other people, not just because they love them and they care for each other, we hope everyone has these Christ-like attributes, but also because their grade's on the line, right? Because you cannot be successful unless your teammate is successful. Then we can have this interdependence. Then we can have this notion of community. So how can we foster this notion of interdependence, this notion of community within a discussion board? So I don't know what you all teach. There's enough people here, we probably teach everything, right? So give me an example of a discussion board that you have, and we'll talk about community, how that influences your discussion board. Solve problems. What context? Okay. Good. Into the action, right? Now, I assume you work your business, right? Okay. And I assume that you work in the business world for your full-time job, right? And can you be successful by yourself in this job, or do you need other people to be successful? Right. So how do we do that, right? How do we make sure that students realize that their success in this class, their ability to complete this assignment is based on the help they get from other people and the help they give other people, right? And that's the interdependence question, right? Now, if every assignment is doable by one person, and if every grade is given to just one person, there is no incentive for community. There is no incentive for interdependence. So instead, we need to structure, we change the class because we need to make the assignments big enough that you need not only more than one person to solve it in terms of number of hours, but perhaps more importantly, we need more than one different sets of skills. We need more than one sets of perspective, more than one set of ideas, right? Think about a basketball team where everyone plays exactly the same position. Think about a soccer game where everyone plays goalie, or everyone plays striker, or everyone plays defender, right? It's not going to be very successful. Now think of the same thing where people come with a different set of skills, and together, they're a team because they play different positions, right? Like for an example, one thing we do in one of my classes, we have projects where we have groups of 5 people, and they have to produce a document. And so we have the editor, then we also have the organizer, and then we have the fact checker, and then we have 1 or 2 individual contributors. And while everyone contributes to the document, they work on it from a different role, you see. And that's a great way to have this interdependence because, hey, you might have all the great research done, all the great facts, but the deliverable is less quality because the editor didn't do their job, or because the organizer, the manager, didn't coordinate activities, so one person was too heavily weighted, one person was too lightly weighted. So assigning roles is a great way to do that. Now, there's a document produced by 3 BYU Provo professors. I don't know what the discipline, to be honest, but it's called strategies in collaborative writing. If you email Helfrich J at BYU-Idaho, I'll send you a copy of it. It's like a 60-page document. And it describes different strategies for getting people to work together in different workflows, different roles, different document management strategies, all of which may help to get this notion of community working in your problem. Okay? Yes?
Can I give you an example?
Hit it.
I think this works great theoretically.
Yep.
But I teach a money management course.
In what class?
Money management.
Money management. Good. Do you have any handouts? Do you have any handouts? Just a joke. Money management. Sorry.
And you could argue that the group discussion that requires the most interdependence is the one that's the most challenging and the most problematic. So there's several different types of discussion boards, but the one I'm thinking about is one where it's like a home ownership exercise. So everybody posts a home they're selling, and they have to negotiate with other people to buy their home. They're trying to sell their home. They go through the process of shopping for a loan and love the process to do that. And part of the issue is it interlinks some of these other factors like size of group.
Yep.
That becomes problematic.
Yep.
But in order to be successful, it requires other people to participate.
Good.
But if people don't, and if nobody makes an offer on the house, and nobody responds when I make an offer on their house,
Yep.
then it's problematic because I don't get anywhere.
Yeah. Now, why is it we have problems with these things in academic settings, but we don't have it in the workplace? Now, I spent a dozen years at Microsoft, and everyone was highly motivated to pull their share and more on every project, every team. And yet, when you come to academia, everyone's highly motivated to rely upon the one person who cares so they could do the work and you just get the score, right? And the answer is, I was meant to be a hypothetical question. I should have said, question. The answer is the reward structure is completely backwards in a traditional academic environment, right? Because we reward them according to the quality of the document, regardless of who contributed. Therefore, we have this motivation structure for loafing, right? I remember, once again, I was doing my PhD online, and there was 24 of us who were in a cohort together. And all of them were BYU-Idaho faculty. So it was great, it was a wonderful experience, right? And we worked on a team project. I'm like, great, and guess what? The same thing existed with adults. The people who are teaching their students to try to work together were the same ones who were loafing. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? But once again, they were victims of the system, and the system motivated people to be loafers, to rely upon the Hermione Granger to pull the weight while everyone else was the Ron Weasley, right? So in a class I just walked out of a minute ago, we have 24 people working on one document. And there was zero loafing going on. And the reason for that is I took that academic reward structure and threw it out the window. And I introduced one straight from industry called a stack rank. Has anyone heard of a stack rank? Got one person here? Okay. So what you do is you organize people from the best contributor to the worst contributor. Okay? So the team we have one project manager, we have 4 leads, and each lead has 3 or 4 individual contributors, and each lead is going to rank the individual contributors according to their quality work they do. Best to worst. And then the project manager is going to get the leads together, and they're going to fold in the different teams, so we have one complete list of the highest performer to lowest performer. Okay? And then, once that stack rank is done, they give it to me, and I assign compensation, because I'm the sponsor, right? And I look at someone like, yeah, that corresponds to a B, that corresponds to a C. I look in between there's a B minus, and then I assign compensation according to my perception of how the overall performance of the class is. And then the leads talk to the individual contributors and say, this is what you need to do to be higher up. This is exactly the same thing we do in the workplace, right? And everyone's motivated to be higher in the stack rank. Everyone's motivated to be a team player. Everyone's motivated to pull more of their share because they know they're going to get rewarded for it, be higher in the stack rank, and therefore get a higher grade. The motivation structure is aligned such that it encourages people to be over-contributors and discourages people from loafing. Because loafing is a surefire way to find yourself at the bottom of the stack. Can we do that? Yeah. Every week. Yep. That's a really good question. Mm-hmm. So we have 4 low stake stack rank, where it's just mostly for feedback and the token number of points. And then midterm is when it gets big. That's like 50% of your grade. And then, so people know where they're going to be, and if they have a problem, they come talk to me, right? And then at midterm, we shuffle everything. We make sure every lead is associated with different individual contributors, and everyone gets that fresh start. Yeah, are you from a small town or from a big town? When you grew up, when you were in elementary school? Small town? My wife was in a population of 1,000, about that size. And everyone knew who you were. Everyone had all their expectations set for you because they knew you was a little kid running around, right? And so you're kind of pigeonholed, weren't you? No one likes that. And so I bet you did what my wife did, got out of town. Came back 10 years later, and guess what? Whoa, hey, you're not that little kid anymore. You hit the reset button. Everyone deserves the reset button, don't they? And that's a key part of making that work, is you got to give people a second chance to reinvent themselves, to prove that they're different than before so they could repent from the mistakes they made earlier, right? In this case also, my job as the instructor is to coach the leads and coach the project manager to help people have a second chance.
James, how does that not occur? There's always going to be a top and a bottom.
Yep.
Yeah, how's that work?
So let's say I have 24 stellar people. Then they're going to give me a stack rank. I'm going to look at the bottom person. That bottom person has an A- performance. Everyone's got an A. Or let's say that I have a whole bunch of slackers. I look at the top performer, and that's still a B performance. The highest grade is a B. In other words, I look at, from the stack rank, I look at individual people and say, that person, here's the feedback, the peer feedback I got. I forgot to mention that part. Every member of the class gets peer feedback and sends it directly to me. I look at the peer feedback and say, okay, that person's performance is an A-, and I set that. I'm allowed to decide compensation. I'm not allowed to shuffle the stack. So that means everyone above that person is going to have a higher grade. Everyone below that person is going to have a lower grade. And I'm okay if the entire class is an A. I'm also quite okay if the whole class is a C. Got that? Yeah. Okay, cool. That was interdependence. Give me another one. The task? Okay, this is a tricky one. How do you know you're done? Boy, once again, I'm sorry that wrapping is so bad. I used the right font and everything. Okay, how does someone know they're done? Right? How do they know what good enough is? How do they know the level of expectation? And this is really bad because instructors intrinsically know the quality work they're looking for. They know when a paper is good enough. They know when the problem set is done with enough discipline. But the students don't know, right? There's this hidden syllabus, right? Like the instructor's playing a game of I got a secret, right? And as a result, there's this degree of angst and anxiety on the part of the student. For an example, I was taking this qualitative data analysis class when I was in grad school, and the teacher wanted us to write a paper for publication, basically. And I decided to do open book versus closed book tests, and I interviewed a bunch of students and blah, blah, blah. Did all this analysis, wrote the paper up. I'm like, okay, is this done? Because I had no idea what done looks like. Does done mean I got accepted for publication? Or done mean I collected some data? Or I went through the motions? Or I answered all the questions on the test correctly? I have this anxiety. I don't know what done is, right? If a student keeps asking you, saying, is this good enough? Then we have a problem with task. Okay? This is one of the easiest things to fix. We can either, if we're a designer of a discussion board, we can say, this is the definition of good enough. Or if we're a facilitator, we can say the same thing. One of the things I like to do for the task problem is I say, okay, 10 points is full credit for this week. 3 points is a fantastic post, and here's a couple examples of fantastic posts. 2 points is an acceptable post, no errors, but you didn't blow my socks off. My socks are firmly on my feet. 1 is there's some redeeming quality, and 0 is a me too, right? And so I give them examples of that. And so if someone says, hey, I don't understand, we only got 4 points, I'm like, well, okay, just take a look at our definition of task. Do you think you deserve any more than 4? Well, not according to that scale. We'll read the scale next time. But that's what it's all about, is just communicating to them what good enough is. Questions about that? Oh, and then, by the way, if your discussion board says, discuss this topic, how do you know you're done discussing? Right? What does that even mean, discuss this topic? Talking to the screen? I don't know. Yeah.
I think in ours they defined it pretty well in terms of like what the minimum requirement is, but my struggle is trying to get them beyond that, because otherwise, I do a main post, I make a common post on Monday.
Yep.
I'm not there for a week because I don't need to be.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about synergy in a minute here, because that's another important part of that. But when I create my rubrics, I have a rubric for every assignment, so hopefully they can self-grade. Hopefully, they can say, hey, look, I believe I deserve a 90% on it. I give them a 90%. I'm not surprised, right? That's a good way to get tasks, is give them a good rubric. But for me, the 90% column on my rubric is you've done everything I asked you to do. That's good. That's a minimal for a barely squeaking by an A. But if you want a full A from me, if you don't want an A minus, you got to impress me occasionally. I think we give out too many A's. That's another talk altogether, right? But yeah, and I do give them an example of what exceptional looks like. Finding material outside of the course of what's presented. Do some research on your own, or something like that. Or find an elegant solution to a problem if we're talking our spreadsheet one. Okay, let's talk synergy for a second here. Let's talk synergy. Synergy, okay. So I want you to all think back to the best teacher you ever had, right? I want you to think back, was that English teacher, Mrs. Washington in 8th grade that brought Macbeth to life to me, or I had this wacky math teacher who wore, he was really wacky. He wore the same shirt every day. He called it style. It's like Steve Jobs, but not as much style. But anyways, but he was so engaging that I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, right? And there was these big aha moments where I'd literally say out, ah, and people look at me, I'm like, well, that was pretty cool, Can you picture the teacher who did that for you, right? How in the world can online experience, an asynchronous experience, be that way? How can we get people engaged? How can people feel like they missed something if they didn't show up to class that day? That's synergy, right? And I thought for the longest time this was the big difference between online and face-to-face. Online has no synergy. There ain't nothing going on. There's just text there, and that's it, right? But my kids proved me wrong. Because my kids are in a different generation than you and I, right? They have always known the internet, right? They have the internet in their pocket, right? They text their friends as their primary means of communication, right? And so whenever we go on a road trip, which we do every summer, then electronic devices are off for long periods of time. That's one of our rules. I think it's a great rule, by the way. Sometimes I take it off with a hammer. But anyways, that's another story altogether. And when we are allowed to turn electronic devices back on, usually about a half an hour a day, there is activity going on in my car or the hotel room, wherever we're at, right? Because they want to post all these pictures and say all these things to their friends, and they want to see what their friends are doing, and blah, 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 and they're engaged, and they're talking, look at this, and the phones get passed around. That is an asynchronous online environment, and it has synergy. How can we make our discussion boards have synergy? How can we have people, if they didn't check in for a day, they feel like they've missed something? I think it's possible. Right? I think it's possible. Now, you have no synergy when everyone posts Friday night at 5 p.m. for a 6 p.m. due date, right? You have no synergy, right? But a couple things that I do, a couple of my techniques I use, is I release things a little bit at a time. Like, I'm on board 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. I'm sitting there eating my cereal in the morning. I'm on the discussion board, reading posts, assigning points, and interacting a little bit, forking the discussion, pinching some out, giving direction. It takes 10 minutes. Usually there's milk all over my keyboard, right? And then I do the same thing at lunch, except usually it's marinara sauce. It's not milk. And then do right just at dinner time as well. That's kind of my interaction time. It's not grading time. That's synergy time, right? And I'm always putting little tidbits out there, just little tidbits out there. And the students who are on the ball realize that if they check 3 times a day, they're going to get their full points for the discussion board easily because they're going to find something that's relevant. They're going to find something they have an opinion or a chip on their shoulder or something they remembered from the reading or something I read on the internet and they go look it up and they post and stuff like that. And these people are accepting synergy because they know the discussion board is going on. And they know that if they wait till the last minute, they're going to be heavily penalized because all the good comments have been made, all the easy questions have been answered, all the problems have been worked out except for the really hard ones. So, how can we get synergy going on in our discussion board? Questions? Comments? Yeah. Okay, so the aha moments, right? So one of the things I teach is human-computer interaction, UI design. And we do this technique called the card sort, okay? And what you do is I give them a whole bunch of button labels from an application, Microsoft Paint. There's like 30 of them. And I tell them to organize it, right? That's what a card sort is. And they organize and they're talking in groups of like 5 or 6. They organize, they're talking. Meanwhile, this is a face-to-face one. I'm on the whiteboard and I'm writing down the comments people are saying as they organize these things. Because they're focused on the task. They're not aware of me. And I'm just sitting there writing. Then I finally gather them all together. They look at the board. And then I start talking about the data that I collected on them without their being aware. And they're like, oh. The value of the card sort is not how they organize things, but rather how you get people to talk about things. Now, I could have just said that, but it had none effect, right? Instead, you want a little bit of drama. You want to build up, drop the bomb. Who knows when that bomb's going to get dropped, right? And so can we take this thread, this discussion, and can we drop a little tidbit here, drop a little tidbit there, drop a little bit tidbit there, and then all the pieces are in place, say, please read these 3 posts, drop the bomb. And now they say, I get it. It all comes together, right? That's what synergy is all about, dropping the bomb. Skin in the game. Make people invested. When you present ideas and grade them on it, they're not involved. That's your ideas, right? But if you take one of their ideas and you develop it and that becomes the main thread, now they're invested in that idea. And they're going to watch that thread as their idea plays out, or their approach to solve the problem, or the scenario they offered, or whatever else it is gets developed slowly with time. Now, this works a little bit, sorry, I'm walking too far away. This works a little bit on the icebreaker activity. Because their initial post, they're putting themselves out there. They have skin in that game, right? And if someone responds to one of their posts, then, they're going to say, oh, yeah, and then they're going to connect to people. We're the same hometown. We have the same hobby. They have skin in that game a little bit. But we can also get them to have skin in the game in all the other discussion board activities. And that is one of the many tools we can use to get synergy because now people are invested and they care. Now, by the way, I hope you see here, I am not giving you any formulas, right? I'm saying this slide was very carefully, the slide deck and presentation was very carefully designed to be considerations. If you think about these 6 things, think them all the way through, when you're facilitating or designing a discussion board, I'm convinced you're not going to screw it up. But if you're blind to it, you probably will. So as long as we take them all into account, and by the way, I'm sorry, I have handouts here. So if you want to come by afterwards, I have them all written out, and I have The 6 considerations, as well as a couple examples of how they play out in various contexts that I'll be happy to share with you. So don't worry about us covering everything. I don't like covering stuff. Okay, give me another one. Norms. Yes, norms are a fun one. Okay, so I was in the Navy, okay? And when you walk into the wardroom, there is protocol. And if you don't know those protocol, you're going to look like a fool and might possibly find yourself in the brig. For an example, this is one thing I learned my first time in the wardroom. Wardroom is like a conference room, a lounge, a dining room, all kind of in one, okay? And only officers are allowed, right? This is a great way to embarrass yourself. Is sit right down, dish yourself out something to eat, and eat it. Now, the norms in the wardroom are quite different. You stand around the table, highest rank in the front, lowest rank in the back. You wait. If someone higher rank than you, you move down a little bit. Finally, when the captain comes in, he sits down, you're allowed to sit down. And after he has sampled everything on the menu, then you're allowed to eat, right? That's the norms for the wardroom, right? Unspoken, but definitely existing. And we have norms in our face-to-face classrooms too. Like I have a couple of my colleagues, don't talk unless your hand is up. Or no laptops. Or address people by their title, or shout things out, or shoot things at each other. I was watching one of my colleagues teach yesterday, and the norms in this classroom were really fun. They tease each other relentlessly. Relentlessly. Like, for an example, one of the students said, "Oh man, I made a mistake, just like Brother Camo." And Brother Camo is a teacher. And he's like, "Yes, I know, I'm a Mr. I make mistakes all the time." And they tease each other, right? That's the norms, right? So what are the norms for your discussion board? What are the norms for your classroom? They exist, but are you stating them? And are they what they should be? For an example, I teach a class called Computer Security, and doing research is a big part of this, right? And so the norms are, and I state this out in a document, that everything you say must be cited, the citation must be a primary, secondary source. This is a definition of a primary, secondary source, right? I state it, right? And we have my week 1 reading quiz has them read this document and answer questions about it, so I'm sure they know what the norms are. But that's not enough. Just saying it is not enough. You got to enforce it. You know, if we say BYU-Idaho, the dress code is important, and we don't enforce it, it doesn't really exist. Because as soon as one person gets away with it, then 4 people get away with it, and pretty soon you got no dress code, right? Same is true with your class. So week 1, week 2 is all about establishing the norms. If someone makes a post that is not up to speed, you got to cut it, remove it, send an email, paste it saying, "Hey, this post here, you got some great ideas, but read this document. It doesn't satisfy this criteria, this criteria, this criteria. Please try again." If you do that often enough, they realize that Me Too's don't count. Because if there's enough Me Too's in that discussion board, I guarantee that's all you're going to see. You got to set the norms, right? The writing quality, the correctness, the tone. One of the discussion boards I use is for reviewing other people's designs. And if the tone is not tactful, if it's derogatory, if it's impatient, got to watch that. The first 1 or 2 weeks, those comments are in, pull it out right away as soon as you see it. That's why you have to be on 3 times a day. You know, are you aware of this tone? You know, realize that when you say something, that's what I say in the email, and when you say something to people, they may or may not remember it, but if you write it down, that has a way of showing up in your performance evaluation. You know, written down words are forever. So enforce the norms. Figure out what's best for your learning requirements, for your personal style. Make sure they know what they are and enforce them. Questions, comments? Yeah.
I guess I was thinking of norms like culture.
Uh-huh.
I think you're expressing that. There's a sort of, it's hard to write a post about what the norms are.
Yeah.
And it's something that sort of evolves over the first few weeks.
Yeah.
But you also
Yep.
Sort of juxtaposed to me, but I'm seeing how you're using those together.
I'm going to share with you a norms document that I have. This is for a programming class, so it probably is not going to be related to what you do. That was a joke. So this is for a freshman level class, and I share with them: be on target, be correct, be insightful, be tactful, be clear. Okay, and then I show them examples of here's a post. And then we analyze what's good or bad about it. Here's another one, and then here's a great one. And then here's a bad response, here's an okay response, and here's a great one. Give them lots and lots and lots of examples of good and bad. And then if they find someone posting something that's bad, take a look at the document here and see how this lines up with this, and see how we do one or two things differently can make all the difference. Yeah. It took a long time to write this document, and it took a longer time yet to get it right. So I hand over here. Yes?
So, you've been talking about maybe a norm for a teacher.
Yep.
3 times a day.
Yep.
To make this run.
That's a synergy thing, but yeah.
Synergy.
Yeah.
If we're part-time teachers.
Yep.
We're there once a day.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about how we can make that happen?
Yeah. So why are you there once a day?
It's a part-time job.
It is. It is. But so we have, say for a 3-credit class, we got 9 credits per week, right? That's, an hour and a half a day. I could still afford 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean, and that's why because I've taught, let's see here, 6 online sections in 4 different classes. And literally 10 minutes over breakfast, 10 minutes during lunch, and then I do most of the work in the evening. Makes a huge difference for the students.
We have to have that, for this discussion board to really come and work, we got to be on that 3 times a day.
A little bit here, a little bit there, yeah. I had a lot of pushback because this is what I say in my instructor notes for several of my classes that require synergy. And I get some pushback, and I always say, look, just try it. Just try it for a while, and I make 2 promises to you and see if they're true. Number 1 is it will take you less time overall because you're fixing problems earlier, you're not correcting problems that developed over the course of the day. And I think that you'll find this discussion board will run itself after a while. So try it. I practice what I preach, I promise, right? I have a very messy keyboard as evidence. Okay. Mm-hmm.
By students who are answering questions from other students.
Yep. Yep. That's true, and you can see how these various different principles definitely interplay, because interdependence is I want the students to do most of the work, right? I want the discussion primarily to be between students and not from instructor to student. That's what I really care about. Because once they're able to run a thread, once a student has made a thread and manages that thread because they got skin in the game and they care about it, right? Then they're going to be qualified to keep learning, to keep driving discussions long after they finish my class. Yes?
How do you make sure that your feedback, your presence on the discussion board does not interfere with that interdependence?
Ooh, that's tough.
That's one of my biggest hang-ups. I'm an online student and an online instructor, so
Yeah.
both sides.
Yeah, and your mother. That's right. And so how do you do it with your kids?
A lot of stuff we know.
Right. But you see, when we micromanage them, then we get in the way of their growth, don't we? So our job as parents is to set boundaries. The kid's job is to push them. I got to remember that, right? And then they can express their agency, their freedom within the bounds you've set, right? And the same thing is true absolutely online as well. We got to give them freedom to express themselves, freedom to pursue their own path. But there are bounds because we have learning outcomes. And it requires a fine touch, a fine touch.
Is that, I mean, I'm just curious because I'm thinking, you know, if I go in 10 minutes in the morning,
Yep.
you know, can you give examples of what kinds of things you're doing, like what you're actually writing?
Yes. Yes, I can.
Without interfering with that?
So let's say, for an example, in one of my classes, and this is one of the examples I have on my sheet here, I talk, it's a research class in my security class, and I ask a provocative question, okay? Should we teach black hat techniques in class? That's one of my questions. And I know this question very well. It goes lots of different ways, right? But someone says something, I'm like, oh, interesting point. Have you thought about this? Or, you know, they make a point here, oh, here's another source. Take a look at that and see if that contributes or refutes your idea. You know, just a little guidance here, a little nudge there, right? You're not saying answer. Because when you say answer, what you're saying is, look, my opinion's important and yours is not. What you instead want them to say is, look, your idea is what this class is all about, and I'm going to help you develop it. And that hidden norm, that hidden syllabus, if you will, the students pick up on right away. Does my opinions matter, or does your opinions matter? Yeah. Okay, we are fresh out of time. This was a wonderful discussion. Thank you for participating. Once again, please email me if you have any questions, or if you think that I'm completely off base. I'd love to hear it too. And pick up my handout if you have a chance. Thank you.